Hello, friends. How we feeling? How we doing? Make sure everything is good on my end real quick and that y'all can hear me, cause if you couldn't hear me, shit would suck. But yeah, happy Friday. Today's gonna be like all over the place, but it's fine. We'll figure it out. Yeah, just real quick, make sure y'all can hear me, and if you can hear me, then we will hop into it. We are continuing with our dude Cove Hold and some more. I fucking love this game. I'm obsessed, to be honest. Yeah, let's do a quick little listen, because even though it says it on my end, I still don't be trusting it. Yeah, once I know that y'all can hear me. Yep, you can. Beautiful, wonderful, fan-freaking-tastic. Yeah, now we will hop on into it. Just cause I always like to double check. You never fucking know. So we are officially on step 2. The way I'm thinking we do it is I think we go just straight, row by row. So we'll go these 5 DLC moments that are Coves, and then we have, I read that last time. Okay. And then we have 5 Derek moments. Yeah. Sounds good to me. Damn, let's get into it. Okay. Wave. The family shopping trip had lasted most of the morning, and you still had to unload everything from the trunk before you could go enjoy the afternoon. You cradled another bag in your arms as you headed towards your house. It was one of the heavier bags from the grocery store, loaded with fresh apples, ripe tomatoes, a bunch of carrots, and even half a watermelon. Ooh, watermelon is so good. Ma came out the front door and paused just ahead of you. Need any help with that, Blake? I can bring it the rest of the way, if you want me to. No, I've got it. You were doing fine. Even if it was large, it wasn't really any problem for you. Ma gave you an encouraging grin and rustled her fingers through your blue hair. You set the next bag on the counter. Your older sister began to root around inside for the contents with a sigh. How much is left? Still a few more bags. With a huff and a puff, Elizabeth continued putting away the groceries, and you were treated out of the kitchen before you could become the target of her bad mood. Oh boy, more bad moods from the sister. Careful, Blake. You hadn't been looking where you were going and bumped right into Mom, almost stepping on her toes to boot. Sorry. I can give you a pass this time, but be sure to watch where you're going. If you run into the wrong person, you might get your license revoked. She grinned at the bad joke as you continued through the door. Why are my moms such moms? But I fucking love it though. Outside, Ma had started organizing what remained and putting back any loose objects that had fallen out during the trip. Seriously, can we just hold on? Look at the outside of their, look at their home. Look at this. It's so nice. How dare they live somewhere that nice? Anyways, continuing. When you stepped up to the trunk beside her, she took in a big breath of air, her dress gently swaying around in the breeze. It's a shame we had to spend the morning cooped up in that shopping center. It's a beautiful day, don't you think? You tilted your head to the sky, gazing at the clear blue expanse. Honestly, for me, it would probably be too hot. I do also like when it's raining, though. Yeah, I'm gonna go with it's too hot. You wrinkled your nose, feeling a few beats of stress gathering on your forehead from lifting stuff around in the sun. If there were a cloud or two around to lessen the heat, you would be enjoying the weather a lot more. With a small sigh, you turned back to help Ma with the last of the bags. Oh, the little ... sign says time passes. Oh, hi, Cove. You noticed Mom wave over at Cove, who had just exited his front door, his surfboard propped up under one arm. Let me see. Surfboard and wetsuit. Where might you be off to on this beautiful day? Cove instantly startled, not having realized your family was also out there. Even though your mom was the one who called out, you were the one he looked at. He tried to settle down again. He jogged across the pavement to properly say hello to you and your parents. It was decidedly awkward since Cove had trouble figuring out how close to stand to you. The addition of his unwieldy surfboard made the whole thing seem even clumsier. Oh no, Cove. Careful with that thing, you'll put someone's eye out. Mom chuckled and got a whispered reproach from Ma for it. Pam, please, go easy on him. Cove winced. Sorry, Mrs. Thrasher. Don't mind her, honey. It's a beautiful day for surfing. I haven't been out on the waves in a long time. I'm jealous. Yeah, I'm hoping to get a few good waves before it gets dark. Hi, Cove. He had relaxed a lot when Ma spoke to him, but the rigidity came back as soon as you said something. Hi, Blake. Cove managed to grin, and it almost felt like you had butterflies in your stomach. Do you want to come hang out there later? You noticed the flush of red on his cheeks, but that might have just been from the heat. Ah? Sure, I'll meet you there when we're done. Cool. When he spoke again, he tried to contain some of the excitement that was clearly ready to burst. It'll be fun. You're not done unloading, right? Can I help? No, this is our job. You go enjoy the beach. Blake can catch up as soon as they're finished here. Alright, I'll see you. Yeah, bye for now. Cove headed on down the beach with more skip in his step than normal. It was really cute. You smiled softly to yourself at the thought that you'd be joining him soon. He sure seemed to perk up after you agreed to meet him there. I wonder why that could be. Ma. Now who's giving him a hard time, Lonnie? Shush, it's different. Mom's face broke into an incredulous grin. In what way? I'm being supportive, and he can't hear it. Mom full-on laughed that time. You're the worst of us when it comes to this, honestly. I keep trying to warn people, but they won't listen. I only want to help. I think it's fair to say he might need it. Meddler, but you have a point. Right? You narrowed your eyes at their teasing, and they simply chuckled conspiratorially, before taking more bags from the trunk and heading inside. Once everything had finally been taken in and put away, you got yourself ready to meet Cove at the beach. Well, she mentioned surfing before, I think. So your family had a surfboard around here somewhere. Can I take your board to the beach? Sure, it's in the garage. Just remember to keep the leash on when you're in the water. After finding the board in the back of the garage and getting everything ready, you headed down to the beach. Have fun, honey. Stay safe. When you arrived at the shore, you were greeted by the crash of waves and the soft calls of seagulls. You took in a lungful of the ocean air and felt your peachy skin warm in the sun. You noticed a small setup nearby with a towel, some sunscreen, and a bottle of water. It must be Cove's. You spotted Cove himself nearby. He hadn't gone out to sea yet. He was just sitting in the sand at the water's edge, his board propped up beside him. You strolled up beside him. Hey, I'm here. Blake. He looked up at you with a smile and quickly hopped to his feet. I was wondering if you were still coming. I wouldn't have missed it. He chuckled shyly at your insistence. Okay. Then he cast his eyes out towards the waves. Stop, not the I don't know how to surf. Cove, I'm not that good at surfing. You dragged a toe through the sand, feeling silly, but still worried nonetheless. He gave a bent smile. So, we're just gonna have fun, right? Yeah. His words made you feel better, and the two of you headed into the water together. You paddled out into the sea to where the good waves were. The water was cool against your skin. Not too calm, but nothing crazy. It looks perfect today. He smiled at you, and you couldn't help but smile back. You felt totally content. Until Cove kicked the water a little too hard and inadvertently splashed you. Hey! Sorry. The apology did not come across as especially repentant, as he was practically laughing when he said it. I'm not gonna splash him back. I'm gonna let it go. It'll be fine. You're being goofy. You paddled a little further from Cove to get out of the splash zone. You played around for the rest of the afternoon and kept chatting in between the waves. You thought about how you had surfed today. You were okay today, nothing special. You did pretty good. You know what? We're gonna go with we're improving. Why the fuck not? A while ago, you never would have been able to ride some of today's waves. You really were learning. If you kept this up, who knew how good you'd be at the end of summer? Cove gave you a lot of encouragement about your performance. What an afternoon. The setting sun was visible on the horizon. Every time you would look away, it had sunk a little lower. The beach was darkening, but still pleasantly warm. You knew you should get out of the water before it was completely dark in the sea. You rode one last wave to get back to the beach. There, you picked up your surfboard and gave it a quick once-over. Cove followed behind you to shore. He put his board with his other things and grabbed his towel to start drying off. As he ruffled his hair with the towel, you watched the sunset together. The colors were beautiful in the distance, and the shadows around you deepened. There was no need for words between you two, as you both enjoyed the sight for a moment. Cove broke the silence. The waves were good today, I think. Yeah, totally. He nodded mildly. You've gotten so good. You couldn't help but smile at the praise. It meant a lot coming from him. You chatted a little more until the conversation truly died out and all you heard was the rhythmic sound of waves. Then Cove sighed. The day can't be over. Not yet. He scowled into the distance as if the sun exiting the sky was a personal offense. Don't you think it should be longer? Yeah, should be longer. Short day. Spent the first half of it grocery shopping, apparently. Cove stood up straight in defiance of the approaching darkness. I'm not gonna go home yet. I wanna go somewhere. I don't know. Cove was still dripping in salt water, so you weren't sure what the alternative was. Wetsuits were fine for the beach and not much else. It wasn't a good idea for him to lug his surfboard around town either. We'll sure be welcome anywhere soaking wet like this, for real. Cove finally took note of his current state and laughed. He shrugged. Then he looked down the shore with wide, shining eyes. There's at least one place that's always okay to hang out in, no matter what time it is, the park. You nodded. The park was virtually always empty. Even Elizabeth only went over there nowadays if she was looking for you. How times have changed. She used to be so protective of the place. In fact, the only person there was a chance of running into might be that Jeremy kid. You brought the idea up to Cove and he cringed, but I'm still going. The sun is still there a little. I'm staying out as long as it is. Okay, I'll tag along. Okay, let's go. Cove took a minute to put his stuff in order. He made sure to get it all, though it didn't take much care to shake the sand off. You dealt with your own things. You know what? Take your time. Took your time to pack your bag. The two of you finished at about the same time. He led the way down the beach to the park. It wasn't far, so it didn't take you long at all. The sun still hadn't completely disappeared just yet when you made your arrival. Cove stuck his surfboard upright in the sand and tossed his towel over top. By now, the two of you were mostly dry. The summer breeze on your skin kept you pleasantly warm. Cove idly went over to the monkey bars. He grabbed them, feet flat on the ground, and pretended to go across. He had definitely grown in the past few years. You were still short enough to use the monkey bars yourself. Sometimes being tiny had its perks. When he got to a bar in the middle, Cove pulled himself up and through, then sat on top of the bars. His legs dangled off the side of the bar he perched on. Yeah, join him on the monkey bars, why not? You looked above yourself to inspect the monkey bars. You might have been short, but that just gave you more experience in climbing things. You leaped and grabbed at one of the bars, using the momentum to swing yourself up. It took a little more scrambling, but you made it to the top. Cove seemed impressed. You settled on the monkey bar like it was a throne. You didn't get to be above everything often. Guess what? He smiled broadly and raised an eyebrow. He's not here. Right. It was true. There wasn't a single sign of Jeremy. Looks like it was just going to be the two of you tonight. Cove hung his head and groaned dramatically. Your eyes widened when he whipped his head back up. I can't believe how dumb my parents are for forcing me to come to this stupid place. You were taken aback and blinked for a second before you realized he was quoting Jeremy. Ugh, parents don't know anything. Cove chuckled back at you, amused. You looked around. The old park, the streets you knew like the back of your hand, and the beach. These were your stomping grounds. You wondered how Cove actually felt. How much was his joke just a joke, and how much was sincere dislike of this place? Moving had never been his choice. Do you actually like this neighborhood? I just want to double check. Do you really have to ask that, Blake? Cove kicked his legs carelessly as they dangled. He smiled softly. I like it here. I really do. It's a nice place. He didn't hesitate. There was no uncertainty. That was his genuine opinion. Yeah, I like it too. A contented feeling fell between the two of you. It didn't take long for the day to finally draw to a close. The sun was gone and it was dark. You chatted a while longer, but it was definitely winding down. Chose not to say anything. I think a little bit of silence is fine. You sat in the dark in silence. Cove shifted positions so that his back was on the monkey bars and he could look up at the stars. You wondered how comfortable that could be. Look at the moon. It's so clear tonight. You glanced up and saw a great gibbous moon swelling over the sky. Few clouds covered the sparkling stars above. Too bad we can't stay forever. Cove sighed. It was time to go home. He hopped down from the monkey bars with a thump when his feet hit the ground. You clambered down the monkey bars yourself. You lowered yourself more slowly than Cove and barely made a sound when your feet reached the ground. Cove grabbed his surfboard and threw his towel around his neck. With his water bottle in hand, he was ready. You both began your trek up the road. It was a quiet night and you didn't run into anyone else. In what felt like no time at all, you had reached your street. As you walked, Cove smiled to himself. It was a soft expression and you couldn't help but wonder what put it there. Everything okay? I just remember when we were younger. It used to be such a big deal to come home after dark. You could indeed recall, if you got sandy, your parents would have something to say. If you got wet, your parents would have more to say. And if you came home after dark, well, your moms and his dad better have said it was okay beforehand. You used to need permission for everything. That small comment he made exposed just how much freedom you really had this summer. Cove looked up into the sky, a smile still on his face as the two of you walked side by side reminiscing. When you came to your houses, you turned to each other. Thanks for today, Blake. Bye. Cove waved and you both turned around to your respective houses. This was a pleasant end to the outing, you thought. Okay, they're so cute though. Why are they so cute? I'm like extra thirsty today. I don't know what's going on. My mouth just be extra fucking dry right now. Okay. Let's go with growing. Early one afternoon, you found yourself in the living room with your family. It was another one of those summer days where it felt too hot to go outside, but it was too uncomfortable to do anything inside either. The air conditioner was cranked up as far as you could negotiate it, but everyone was still being pretty lazy. You, your moms, and sister were lounging around while the TV blared on in the backdrop, ignored by all of you. You specifically were, not draped over the coffee table, sitting cross-legged on the floor. You looked out the window at the backyard, not that there was anything of particular interest to watch. Elizabeth broke the silence with a loud groan. You glanced over. She was lying on her back over the couch, massaging her calf with one hand. Ugh, I feel terrible. I'm dying in this house and my legs hurt. Mom looked up from the magazine she'd barely been flipping through and frowned, concerned. Could you have strained them somehow? Elizabeth flailed briefly, then flopped onto her side with a heavy sigh. I don't know, it just hurts. Oh, sweetheart. Ma got up from her seat at the kitchen table and walked over to your sister. She did a light pat on Elizabeth's shoulder sympathetically. I'm sorry you have to deal with that. Maybe it's growing pains? You could be taller by next fall. I can't remember specifically. I feel like I remember seeing something that growing pains like weren't an actual thing. I don't fucking know. Elizabeth scoffed. She didn't look impressed by Ma's assessment. I'd rather be my height forever than deal with this. Mom walked over too, leaning against the back of the couch. Kids, they grow up so fast. Soon Elizabeth will have a home of her own, maybe even with a nice husband and some kids if she feels like it. She sniffled loudly and wiped at her eye, but you could tell it was just a bit. You tilted your head. Even though you knew Elizabeth liked guys, it was hard to imagine her with a boyfriend or husband. She only seemed invested in hanging out with her group of friends, not chasing after boys. Mom must agree with you because she shook her head. Let's not exaggerate, she's still practically a child. But if you ever do pursue romance, Elizabeth, you can come talk to me about it. Definitely. We're always willing to lend an ear. Elizabeth's features contorted in disgust. No way. I'm not talking to my moms about that. Mom's jaw dropped, and she gasped in an exaggerated display of shock. Her hand came up to rest against her chest. Ma only grinned. She didn't look offended by Elizabeth's quick response at all. It really wouldn't be so bad to come to us. I know what it's like to have a crush on a pretty boy or two. I don't, but I can listen anyway. Mom snorted at her own joke while Ma burst into giggles. They were having a little too much fun at Elizabeth's expense. Elizabeth certainly wasn't feeling the amusement because she rolled her eyes and sat up. I'm going back to my room. I'd rather melt alone, thanks. She strode off towards the staircase, taking the steps 2 at a time. Your mom stared after her, then turned to each other with raised eyebrows. Whoops, looks like we scared her off with all that romance talk. Oh well, we'll get her next time. You watched them titter with some surprise. Obviously, your moms liked women, but you had no idea that Ma liked guys too. Today was the first time you heard her say something like that. Ma, I always thought you only liked ladies. You like guys too? Ma turned to you, happy to bring you into things now that you'd spoken up. She smiled and nodded. That's right, I like both. But I like your mom most out of everyone. She's special. Oh, the blush. That's so fucking sweet. Stop it. Ma's smile turned all soft at the corners, like it usually did when she looked at her. She pinched Mom's cheek lightly. Mom reached up to cup a hand over Ma's. Even when Ma stopped pulling her cheek, their hands remained clasped together. Thanks, Alani. I think most women have charm, but no one can hold a candle to you. Ah, Pamela. Ma beamed, then kissed Mom on the cheek she'd been pinching before. They're so cute. I love them. Yeah, no, thought it was very sweet. So sweet. Look at the timeout. Can we just appreciate the blushing moms for a second? Because not them still just being so in love. Like, I love them. They are the goal. They are literally the goal. I'm obsessed. Yeah, thought the moment was very sweet. You smiled to yourself at the sight. No matter how often your moms expressed their feelings for each other, it was always nice to witness it. Ma looked back to you, letting Mom's hand go with a brief squeeze. She settled down next to you, and Mom followed soon after. You know, I'm also here to listen to you whenever you're ready. That offer isn't just for Elizabeth. In fact, I think that talk might be needed sooner for you. After all, you already have someone, isn't that right? Damn! Ma, stop it! Mom shook her head and elbowed Ma, but it was futile. Meddler. Yeah. I'm gonna go with what I said. Ma, come on, stop it. Ma only giggled and smiled, not looking the least bit apologetic. There's no rush, of course. You can take all the time you need to figure out what or who you want. Don't think you have to stick with whatever you come up with right now, either. Life's nice like that. It can change and you can learn. Mom nodded her agreement. The two of us are happy to hear you out, and we may be able to relate better than you think. Still, we won't push the topic, at least most of the time. She gave Ma the weakest scathing look possible while being unable to stop grinning. Thanks. I'll think about it. Good, that's all we ask for. Mom let out another exaggerated sniffle. It didn't take a genius to realize it was fake. First Elizabeth, and now you, Blake? Do you have to grow up? Yes, children tend to do that from time to time. Your parents quickly grew absorbed in their conversation about rearing kids. You took that as your cue to leave, getting up so you could spend some time alone in your room, too. They let you go without problem, so you made your way up the stairs. You let out a sigh once you stepped into your room. It was just as sweltering in there as it was in the living room, possibly even a little warmer. I mean, yeah, you don't seem to have like an AC in here, but the AC was downstairs. Hold on. I want like a proper look at this little fucking room now that I remember how to hide the text. Okay, so we've got some like papers and rolled up things back there. We got the pictures on the little board. I still love this picture right here. Books and such. Computer. It's another book. Okay. Fucking cute. Cute as hell. Cute as hell. I approve. 10 out of 10. Yeah, so I don't understand how it's still... Maybe their AC just doesn't work that good, but like in the hot months for me, when we turn on the AC, it's like fine, it's comfortable as long as you know you're inside. Anyways, enough of their busted AC theory. You couldn't even open your window since it was hotter outside and you would just let the AC out. You dragged your feet as you crossed the room. You checked your current sweltering condition in the mirror as you passed it by. You thought back to the conversation you'd had downstairs about growing up and all that. After a moment, you stepped a bit closer to the mirror. You stared into it, then turned away from the surface to look down at yourself. You were definitely growing, all right. It was weird thinking about how you were now in comparison to what you'd been when you were younger. When it came to your body, I'd say, I guess, slender. You shifted to the side, your head still facing forward and continuing the self-evaluation from this viewpoint. This I love. The fact that female, male, and intersex. 10 out of 10. Considering I feel like intersex people never get brought up. Why am I so thirsty? Help. It's so unusual for me. Yeah. At birth you were assigned female, and what you were born as impacted the way your body grew, but it wasn't what really determined who you were. This. Can we just copy and paste this for people who don't get it on TikTok? When it came to your figure, oh, absolutely. Aimed to not have through hormone therapy. Yeah, we're gonna do that. You were young right now and had a body that was still developing, though you were hopeful about the future. You took a step backwards, finished with your impromptu inspection. You locked eyes with your reflection, cocking your head to the side. All things considered, you didn't look too bad. Like, I don't want to be like a cocky jackass about it, so I think you didn't look too bad. A slight smile tugged at your mouth. Sure, maybe you wouldn't be a model or anything, but you weren't half bad. You shook your head roughly, putting thoughts of what you were turning into out of your mind. This wasn't the time to focus on such things. You had to find something to do in this heat. You shuffled over to your bed, collapsing onto the mattress. Your brow scrunched up in thought. Time passed slowly, and to your annoyance, possible ideas about what to do were few and far between. You weren't sure how long it had been, but eventually you heard your mom call you from downstairs. Blake, there's a call for you. Cove wants to come over. Is that all right? You perked up at the words, sitting up in bed. You yelled back to her immediately. Yeah. You got to your feet and headed downstairs, eager to see your friend. You needed to go downstairs soon anyway, because your empty stomach told you it was almost time for lunch. Just as you reached the bottom of the stairs, you saw Mom put the phone back on the receiver. She glanced at Ma, leaning her hip against the kitchen counter. Well, here comes trouble. We better prepare ourselves. Ma clicked her tongue in clear disapproval of Mom's words. He's such a good boy. Cove never wants to cause trouble. He can just be a bit thoughtless and impulsive. Oh, I know. He's very sweet, but that's what makes it more of a problem. If a stranger or some kid from school was egging Blake on to behave badly, I think we can both agree that they'd do the right thing in the end. But if Cove Holden got into a reckless mood and wanted Blake to be a part of the ride, can we really be certain of what call they'd make then? Yes, we can, Pamela. Blake would do whatever Cove wanted. Damn! Not my mom's being like, you gonna do whatever he's doing, be so for real. Lonnie. Your ma giggled freely at Mom's reaction. You worry too much about those two together. Look, all I'm saying is that I haven't forgotten that time when they were kids and tried to run away together. Okay, fair point. That is a fair observation to make. I can't exactly disagree. Ma just laughed. As she turned away, still snorting, her eyes met yours. She blinked in surprise, then waved at you with an easy grin. Mom looked over, noticing you at the foot of the stairs as well. Oh, I didn't expect you to come down already, Blake. I just wanted to let you know what was happening. Do I call out my mama, though? I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little tempted to be like, hey, what gives with that? Yeah, you know what? Fuck it, we calling out our mom real quick, because what was that? Yeah, you called Mom out on her comment. Well, if I hadn't come now, then I wouldn't have heard everything you said. Oh, you got caught, Pam. What? You were saying things too. I didn't say anything I wouldn't have told to Blake directly. Damn right. Damn fucking right. She says what she's thinking and, like, doesn't do the behind your back thing, and that I can appreciate. Oh, you're unbelievable. You shook your head at your parents, even as you bought a blush when you remembered just what they'd been discussing. Alright, you got me. I'm sorry for being gossipy and saying that about your friend. I can be bad too. We'll get out of your way now. Yeah, that's why I like her, honestly, because she'll say it how it fucking is. And yeah, you're a little bit like, not the little bit like side eye at that whole thing. Because why are you talking about us behind my back though? Weird. Mom sighed in mock defeat and made her way down the hall. Ma followed after her with a hushed giggle. Now you were alone in the living room, tasked with waiting for Cove. And that was just fine with you. If it hadn't been so hot outside, you would have visited him at his house a long time ago. You took a seat at the kitchen counter and settled in for the wait. As expected, there was a knock on the door a few minutes later. When you got up and answered it, your neighbor was standing on the other side. He came in once you stepped aside to let him pass, giving a little wave. You greeted him as you typically did. Oh, we get to pick? How do we typically greet Cove? With a wave, with a low five, with a nudge. You know what? We are gonna go with the hug, because we've been hugging him since we were 8. Be so for real. I feel like my character would be such a little hug bug. He stiffened in your arms, then relaxed seconds after. One would think he'd be used to your hugs after all these years. Hey. His voice was cracked as he struggled to say something. You didn't feel worried about that. It was how he usually reacted when you were close by. Stop! He's so nervous and blushy. It's so sweet. I'm obsessed with their little awkward, like teen feelings. It's so cute. Cove sighed and wiped at his face a bit. You noted the sheen of sweat across his brow. He must be glad to be back in an air-conditioned place, even if he had only had to walk across the street to get here. Is something going on? Why'd you want to come over? I don't want to do anything, not when it's like this. He gestured vaguely to the humid air hanging around. I thought I could at least do nothing with you. Stop. It's so cute. I love them. I love them so fucking much. Yeah, you thought that was really sweet because it is. That shit's so cute. Stop. His words were nice and expressed real fondness for you in a strange sort of way, which was usually the case with Cove. Have you had lunch yet? I was gonna do it soon. He shook his head. I haven't really felt like eating 'cause of the heat. I probably should have lunch. I didn't have breakfast this morning. Yeah, I get like that sometimes too. My parents don't like it when I do that, though. Mine don't either. They'll ask if I ate here when I go back home. As one, you headed into the kitchen. You crossed your arms as you glanced around, wondering what you should scrounge up for a meal. I don't want to eat anything that's warmed up. Is there something cold or not cooked? Yeah. After a bit of back and forth, the two of you concluded that you should raid the fridge and cabinet in order to make sandwiches. Hell yeah, I love a good fucking sandwich. With that settled, you had planned to decide on the outside layers first. There was a wide variety to choose from, since everyone in your house had their own favorites. There was white bread, wheat bread, sourdough, mixed grains, gluten-free bread, and pita pockets. Could you take the grain one for me? Sure. You reached for the mixed grains, then made your decision. Go with the cinnamon swirl bread. Yeah, we're gonna go with the white bread. You pulled out the white bread too, setting both items on the counter. Then you had to decide what main direction the sandwich would go in. I don't have that much of a sweet tooth, so I'm gonna make me a savory sandwich. Something savory would make it feel like a real meal. As for the specific ingredients, oh goodness, that's a lot of things. Okay. I'm gonna go with turkey, mozzarella. What cheese do I want? You know what? Yeah, we'll go mozzarella. I don't know why I'm acting like it's a real fucking sandwich. It doesn't matter. Lettuce, tomatoes, and then you moved on to condiments. For the finishing touch, you intended to top your sandwich with gotta go with a little bit of mayo and a little bit of salt and pepper. It's pretty good. And that was everything. You nodded to yourself with a quiet hum, satisfied. The two of you bustled around the kitchen, opening and closing things in order to collect everything you needed for your individual sandwiches. You focused intently on assembling your own for the most part. When you were close to being done, though, you glanced over at your neighbor. Cove was putting his sandwich together delicately, his brow furrowed and tongue sticking out just barely. There were open jars of peanut butter and honey near his plate, as well as a banana peel. So he was making a peanut butter, banana, and honey sandwich on mixed grain bread. That sounds pretty goddamn dope, I'm not gonna lie. That sounds like it would slap. Maybe you'd have one yourself a different time. Curiosity satiated, you turned back to your plate and finished your own creation. By the time you were done, Cove had already cleaned up his workstation. He turned to face you, studying your sandwich briefly. A small smile tugged at the corners of his mouth. You guessed it didn't look inedible to him, at least. Done? Yeah. Cool. He waited as you quickly returned the ingredients and cleaned a few utensils. Then the two of you collected your respective plates. You both agreed on heading upstairs to hang out in your room. You and Cove entered your bedroom while balancing your food on the plates. Nothing fell, so it was a successful trip. Cove took a seat on the ground, stretched out on the hardwood floor in an attempt to keep a bit cooler. He immediately took a big bite of his sandwich, chewed, then hummed happily. This sandwich is really good. At least that's something. At this point, you sat down and started on your own sandwich. You nodded. Hell yeah, that's like my go-to sandwich in real life, honestly. Obviously, you were a pro at making sandwiches. He leaned back on his hands while chewing and glanced around. His every movement was sluggish. Wanna do something? It seemed the plan of not doing anything at all had already worn thin, despite his lack of enthusiasm. Sure, yeah, why not? He rolled his head back, looking up at the ceiling. What about Hangman? Sure, why not? He put your plate to the side and pulled out some markers and scrap paper. As you laid everything on the floor, he scooted back to make more room in front of you. Cove picked up one of the markers with his right hand while keeping a half slice of sandwich in his left. Can I pick the phrase? Go ahead, I don't mind. He smiled briefly before he bent over the paper and began sketching a hangman frame. Then he stopped, pursing his lips in thought. He tapped the end of his marker against his cheek. You watched silently as Cove looked down at the paper, up at your face, and then off to the side in a loop. His marker kept tapping his cheek the entire time. You raised an eyebrow. He'd suggested the game and wanted to pick the phrase, but it looked like he didn't actually have anything in mind for it. Finally, he put empty lines on the paper to signify spots for letters. All right, you can start guessing. You peered over. His secret phrase consisted of 3 words. The first 2 had 3 letters, and the last had 4. You thought hard about what your first guess would be. Oh, I get to actually do the things. I like to go vowels first, so we'll go A. You got one. After the first round, you were about to take another bite of your sandwich when a thought occurred to you. I wonder if anyone turned off the TV downstairs. The TV. It was on earlier, but no one was really watching. Then everyone started leaving the living room. I know I didn't turn it off. It might still be on downstairs with no one there. Cove smiled crookedly at that. Poor show, playing with no one around to enjoy it. What was it? You squinted off into the middle distance, trying to recall the show's name. I feel like it was some kind of crime involving drama. Cove nodded sleepily. His eyes closed, then opened again with some effort. Can you give any specifics? Maybe I can guess it. Well, you rested your chin on your open palm, groggily thinking as hard as you could. I remember there was a woman with long, blonde hair, I think. She was the one solving crimes, like as a detective or something. There were scenes in a police station 'cause someone got arrested. You lapsed into silence, the both of you thoughtful. Then Cove chuckled. It wasn't that funny, but you joined in the laughter anyway. I don't know what that is. Me neither, and I just saw it. Okay. Going vowels first. Give me E, maybe? Oh, good guess. Hell fucking yeah. Give me the letters. I'm so good at this. Another round came and went, and Cove grumbled as he readjusted himself. His features were twisted in a grimace. I feel so sticky. Ugh, I'm gonna be stuck to this floor forever now. I'll have to charge you rent then. Yeah? How much? $50. I can't afford that. Well, you gotta pay up if you want to stick around. Cove shook his head at your terrible pun and went back to the game instead of answering further. Then you returned to the game. Okay, so this could be 8, could be R. Let's try T, I guess? I don't fucking know. Oh, not what I was going for, but we got one. Yep, that's right. Cove spoke up once more, catching your attention. He was peering down at the piece of paper between you, his expression thoughtful. You know, Hangman is kind of a creepy game. Why did people come up with it? Why did they play it? Maybe it's what they had instead of real court trials back then. Absolutely, give me this bullshit. Cove raised a skeptical eyebrow. You bit back a laugh and feigned seriousness. If you got it right, then you were innocent and they let you go. But if you got it wrong, they killed you. He shuddered at your eerie explanation before rejecting it outright. Y'all, I'll be right back in just a second. I'm sorry. Hello. Okay, we are back. I apologize. Had to take care of something. Where were we? Oh, yeah. Me and my weird fucking hangman theory. He shuddered at your eerie explanation before rejecting it outright. That's terrible and not real. You chuckled to yourself and went back to the creepy game. Okay. So I guess T, but I wanted to, this is the one I was trying to figure out. Yeah, let's go. Alright. Ha! That's another one. By this point, Cove had finished his sandwich. Yours was almost gone too, but now you were getting thirsty. You brought it up to your neighbor. Should we go downstairs to get some drinks? I was thinking that too, but I don't really want to get up. Me neither. You looked over at him, narrowing your eyes with false suspicion. But hey, what happened to you not being able to get up ever again because you were stuck to the floor? That's still true. I mean, we're not actually going, are we? I only thought about it. You rolled your eyes and dropped the issue defeated. Cove grinned a little at your disappointment over his victory. Okay, let's see, we did A, E, next vowel would be I. No, sorry, I'm gonna start adding the little person. Oof, not my noggin. O. Oh, you're really close. Okay, then you. Oh, wait a goddamn fucking minute. I swear. Stop. Stop. You're definitely gonna get it. So help me. You are cute. That was the phrase that Cove had spent so long settling on. You stared at it. A few correct letters in, you had a feeling you knew what the phrase was. Still, you felt butterflies in your stomach at seeing it, clear as day on the paper. You took in the words for a moment longer, then you looked up at Cove. He had trouble meeting your shocked gaze, a smile settling awkwardly on his lips. His next words left him in a mumble. It was all I could think of at the time. Stop, wait, why was that, that was so fucking cute, I can't. I definitely would have covered my face at that age. I would have been like, okay, I don't know how we move on from this. Suddenly, you had trouble meeting his eyes too. Your hands came up to hide your flushed features from his sight. Not the damn Cove. I guess thank you? I don't know. How do you respond to something like this? I never had someone do something as smooth as Cove just pulled, for real. I'm gonna go with an awkward thank you. Cove smiled a bit more, clearly still feeling awkward about the move he pulled. He turned away from you, his cheeks tinted pink. A moment passed between the two of you. Now would be the perfect time to change the subject, but you didn't. He didn't either. Things started feeling a bit more personal all of a sudden. You looked into Cove's ocean eyes and saw yourself staring back. I feel like if I said that top one, that Cove would, like, fucking combust. I don't think he would survive. I also don't think putting him on the spot of, like, really... So I'm gonna go with, I'm not gonna say anything here. The words were on the tip of your tongue, but it was hard to break the heavy silence. Thankfully, Cove did it for you. His jaw was set in determination, an earnest look in his eyes. I meant what I wrote, you know. Finally, he broke the eye contact. I've heard at some point you're supposed to start liking types of people, guys or girls or whoever. I haven't really noticed that yet. Nothing's changed. Not in a big way. Not for everybody. Maybe I have to grow up more, but at least with... You waited, but he trailed off. He wasn't going to keep talking. You frowned, a little disappointed. You wished that he had continued with what he was saying. You shook off the strangeness of the situation and tried to be supportive. Maybe you just don't like anybody, or maybe you like all types of people. That's normal too. Cove seemed to appreciate that thought, if the smile that appeared on his lips was any indication. But the expression was quick to disappear. He peered over at you, looking nervous. Okay, what about you? What kind of guy or person do you like? He winced and seemed to be mentally kicking himself for saying it like that. Oh, poor sweet baby angel. He's trying his best. You considered his question carefully. Did you know who or what you liked? Not that there was only one person you'd ever had those feelings for. Yeah. So, at this age, it wasn't really... Yeah, at this age, I don't think I really knew about having an interest in people, like, physically. Definitely starting to have a romantic attraction in a general way. But specifically, when it came to how you felt towards boys, this I love too. You found them attractive, you thought you'd be happy to be with a guy someday. You found them attractive, but you hadn't thought about being with a guy. You weren't physically interested, but you'd be happy to have a romantic relationship with a guy. You generally weren't interested in guys, but there were special exceptions. This shit is so inclusive and cute. I'm gonna go with the top one. And how you felt towards girls. Yeah, I'd go again, found them attractive, thought you'd be happy to be with girls someday. For people who aren't exclusively male or female, found them attractive, you thought you'd be happy to be with someone who's non-binary someday. You returned your attention to Cove. He was waiting patiently for your response. Yeah, explain how you feel to Cove. Dude shared with you that he doesn't really feel that yet, so share. He listened intently, taking in every word as you tried to convey how you felt. He definitely perked up a bit when you mentioned having some interest in romantic relationships. It was nice to have people who supported you when it came to who you liked. And you knew he accepted you for who you were too. That. He had never treated you any differently because of your identity. Yeah, Cove is chill as shit, and I love him for it. Then he scratched the back of his head, sheepish. I'm not really sure how we ended up talking about all of this when we started out just playing Hangman. But it was good, I think. Not the conversation had a mind of its own. I think so too. Cove chuckled a little bashfully. He glanced around, clearly scrambling for something else to say. So, have you heard from Lee recently? Yeah, actually. I'm really glad you brought it up. The conversation took a lighter turn after that, and it felt like you got closer that afternoon. Finally, the blazing sun began to set. To your relief, the air cooled down a bit as a result. You pulled yourself off the floor, as did Cove with some minor complaint. You both stretched your arms, groaning, and yawned into your hands. You glanced out your window briefly, taking in the soft reds, pinks, and purples of the late afternoon sky. Somehow, you had made it through the scorching hot day in one piece. Cove turned towards you, motioning towards your window with his chin. Want to go outside? It might be better out there than it is here now. Sounds good. I could really use some fresh air. The two of you took your time heading downstairs. You stopped briefly to grab a drink of water, then continued on your way. You stepped outside, one after the other, your destination being the familiar hills behind your house. This time of day, it was quiet outside. The flowers blew gently in the wind, petals trembling but stubbornly hanging in there. You felt the breeze cool your heated skin, and you relaxed your shoulders. Cove closed his eyes, releasing a deep breath. I really love it out here. I do too. The W Hill. Cove smiled. Tendrils of his hair danced with the wind. A beat passed, but his gaze didn't stray from your own. His voice was impossibly soft when he spoke up again. I'm glad I met you, Blake. You're really important to me, you know. Definitely you're special to me. Yeah. 'Cause I could say I feel the same. I'm gonna go with you're special to me. Your voice came out equally delicate. From the way his features brightened, though, you knew he heard you. Then Cove reached over and held your hand without another word. Even as the sun disappeared completely and the sky darkened, you and Cove remained side by side for as long as you possibly could. Okay, that was so fucking cute. That was absolutely adorable. I need more fucking water. Thirsty. Okay, we're on to family. The sun warmed your skin from its place in the sky, and you closed your eyes, enjoying the mix of the heat with the pleasant breeze that drifted past you. You and Lee had spread out a blanket on top of one of the hills behind your house and had been relaxing there for a while now. Lee had come over earlier in the day, and while a range of activities had been discussed, from staying home to heading down to the beach, a picnic on the hill had been the choice you both settled on. A small spread was laid out in front of you, some bottled water, soft drinks, as well as chips and sliced fruit. You sat up and reached for a snack, listening to Lee talk away about the musical she had gotten to see a few days ago. It was unbelievable. There was singing, dancing, and crazy stunts, and it was all done live right in front of my face. Maybe one day we could go together. I've got to see more shows like that. You smiled at Lee's enthusiasm, knowing how much she enjoyed singing and performing. And she was good at it too. You had gotten the chance to hear her sing a couple of tunes, and you knew she put a lot of effort into it. You also liked to sing, but you weren't very good. That didn't stop you from doing it, though. I wonder if maybe we could put on our own show? Think of how fun it'd be. We could perform for our parents and ask our friends and some other people to come and watch too. It'd totally work. I don't know about that. Yeah, I'm definitely someone with stage fright about shit. I'm like, in front of people, maybe no. But wouldn't showing off to everybody be fun? The thought of an audience made you feel queasy. Not really. Are you really super sure? You have so many skills you could show off to the masses. Okay, Lee, for you I'll give it a go. You could see that Lee was really excited about the idea, so with a small nod of your head, you agreed to go along with it. I'm gonna sing. Do you want to too, or maybe do something else? I'll sing too. Cool, we'll perform an incredible duet. Is there anything else that's coming to your head? One more thing. I'll make a backdrop of some kind, or some kind of stage. Yes, that'd make it a real show. I'll paint something. You thought of your painting kit back home. You could definitely use that to make something for the show. You just hoped there would be a large enough piece of paper or cardboard for a backdrop. Is there anything else that's coming to your head? What are the options again? Outfits, makeup. No, that's all. I think the song and the backdrop are good. The two of you ran back to your house to grab the supplies you needed, dodging your mom's amused questions before heading back out to the blanket to get started. You spread a large sheet of paper out in front of you and began imagining a backdrop of your scene for the show. Lee and you discussed the plans in detail, settling on a song first and then practicing out parts for the show. The afternoon passed quickly, the sun dropping lower and lower in the sky, and after having thoroughly worked out how the show was going to go, you decided to take a break. Oh, we should have invited Cove to watch us practice our show. He could tell us if it's bad before we put on the real thing. That's smart. We should ask him to watch us later. Okay. It's too bad Derek isn't in the neighborhood today. I like him. Yeah, he's a good person. I knew you'd think so. But speaking of boys we like, what's the relationship status between you and Cove? Is it good? Blushton said nothing. After his little hangman stunt the other day, are you kidding? Ooh, you're bright red. I guess it's very good. But really, are you gonna be telling him you have a crush on him anytime soon or what? Nah, I'm not telling him. Or I don't have a crush on Cove. She couldn't even try to contain her laughter. I've seen the way you look at him. Everybody has. Hearts are practically flying around your head when you're together. Lee waggled her eyebrows and laughed when you huffed at her. Don't worry, Blake. He totally feels the same way. I guarantee it. You didn't want to continue this at all, so you kept your mouth shut. The two of you talked a little more about Cove amongst other topics, and you found that it was nice having someone to speak with about these sorts of things. Finally, you both decided to pack everything up and head back home for the evening. Lee talked excitedly about the show as you did, and you thought back on what you'd already accomplished for it. You could definitely do with a little more practice, but what you had so far was a solid foundation for the performance. Upon walking through the front door, you were met by your moms and Elizabeth hovering around each other in the living room. What's with all those sour faces? What happened? Everyone's so serious. Tension hung thick in the air as the three of them turned to you and Lee, frowning slightly. You had interrupted something. Exactly what, you weren't sure. Who died? For real. Ma winced, and almost immediately you knew joking was the wrong thing for this. You really hoped no one was actually dead. We were just having a talk with your sister. The room fell quiet again, with no one quite knowing what to say. You felt incredibly awkward, but the silence didn't last long. You don't have to stop just 'cause those two are here. There's no reason to try keeping it a secret. Elizabeth was mad with her arms folded defensively over her chest, but your moms nodded in agreement with her. Elizabeth was just asking about her parents, her biological ones. The world spun around you at the news. You couldn't understand why was this happening now. When you glanced at Lee, she shuffled her feet uncomfortably, as though she didn't know if she should be there or not anymore. You didn't know either. Your moms had always been open and honest about the fact that neither of them had given birth to you or your sister, but the details hadn't been fully explained before. It made sense that Elizabeth didn't know a lot about her biological parents and wanted to know more. You just hadn't ever thought you'd accidentally stumble into it. Elizabeth looked at your parents expectantly. She wasn't going to let the unintentional interruption derail things. We don't want to keep that information from either of you. It's your right to know your past, but we did want to wait until you asked us to hear yourselves. Well, it's happening now, so. Your mom shared a nervous glance, and Mom took in a quick breath before speaking again. I adopted you from the Philippines when you were just a baby. Elizabeth dropped her arms, her eyebrows shooting upwards in surprise. Wait, I wasn't born here? No, you weren't. You could clearly see that your sister was appalled by this information. You struggled even more with what to do or how to react. Am I gonna have to pass some tests to even be a citizen? No, you were adopted into the country. We took care of things. You're already a citizen. You have nothing to worry about. I followed all the laws when it came to bringing a child into the U.S. Nothing can be held against you. Elizabeth sighed, fascinated with the information, but still far from happy. Who were my parents as people? Why did they put me up for adoption in the first place? Ma softly put her hands over Elizabeth's shoulder, trying to provide some support before she gave her the answer. I'm so sorry, sweetie. Your parents were reported to have died. They didn't go into details on the specifics of how, but you were an orphan. I wish we had better news for you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth was torn between emotions. Her eyes filled with tears as she threw her hands in the air, settling on enraged. Great, so I can never meet them, even if I wanted to. Not that I could have anyway, since they lived in another part of the world when they were still alive. Elizabeth turned her back on you and your moms and stormed off, sprinting up the stairs and to her room before anyone could stop her. I have to go and talk to her. Ma immediately started to follow her, but Mom gently held her by the arm and shook her head. We should give her a little space to process it all. Your Ma's head hung low, but she stopped walking. With Elizabeth now gone, the two of them seemed to remember you and Lee were still standing awkwardly off to the side. I'm sorry you had to see all that. It's not how I expected it would have happened when the time came. But since it's the topic of the day, Blake, is there anything you'd like to ask? You deserve to know, after all. Lee patted your back and gave you a supportive look. That's... I mean, if this is what we're doing right now... Sure, I want to know. Your parents both nodded in sync to your reply, ready to talk. I can leave if you want to have things be private. I want you here. Yeah, I want Lee here. I can do that. Lee shifted a little closer to you in support, and you were glad to have her there with you. It made you feel a little stronger somehow. You turned to face your parents again, preparing yourself for what they were about to tell you. Ma was the first to speak, her voice quivering with emotion. You were adopted as a baby, but 2 years after Elizabeth. We used a different organization that time, and you were adopted within the U.S. We're sorry to tell you, Blake, your parents had also passed away, and no other family member took you in, if there were any. That's why we wanted to wait until you asked. We didn't want to suddenly drop that in your lap. We wanted you to be prepared. We're sorry, Blake. Lee gave you a reassuring squeeze on the arm to show she was there for you. Thanks for telling me. I did want to know, and now I do. Thank you for listening, Blake. If there's anything else you want to know, all you have to do is ask. We'll do our best to answer any questions you have. How are you feeling now? Are you going to be okay? Lee watched you closely, as though judging how exactly she should react to what was going on. I mean, here's where it gets weird for me, because, like, I'm not adopted. So this is one of the cases where attempting to put myself in the character's shoes gets a little fuzzy. Let's see, 13. I feel like I probably would have been somewhat okay. Like, if there was an option where, like, fine but not fine, you know what I mean? Because I don't think I'd be angry. I don't think I would be sad or cry specifically. I think it'd feel weird. Because here's the thing, I feel like while moms are doing their best right now, hold on, let's get a look at them. While moms are doing their best right now, and Lee is trying to be supportive, it seems like everyone wants me to have a big reaction like Elizabeth did, and I don't think I would. I think my reaction would be on a much smaller scale. So if anything, I think I'd be more stressed out that everyone wants me to have some reaction, it seems. I'm gonna go with I feel fine. Because it's like the closest, I think. You spoke with a refreshed tone, as though you had a load off. Your mom smiled sadly, but you knew they believed you. No one seemed to have any words after that. Yeah, I'm gonna go to my room and, like, relax. You slowly walked past your mom's and headed to the stairs, your mind racing from the conversation. Yeah, I'm gonna have Lee go, like, leave me be for a bit. Because here's the thing, even without like a big reaction, that's still a lot of information to have dropped on you at 13. Okay, I'll be downstairs if you need anything. When safely behind your closed bedroom door, you let out a heavy sigh, a heavy breath before heading over to take a seat on your bed. You lay back on your bed and stared up at the ceiling, tracing the outlines of the old crack and lines up there with your eyes. You had no idea what to do now, so you stayed where you were for a while, thinking everything through. Everyone had been so upset earlier, and you didn't really know what you could do to help. Eventually, the sun finished setting, casting long shadows on your bedroom walls until the outside was enveloped by the dark of night completely. Suddenly, a knock drew your attention, causing you to sit up straight. When you realized it wasn't coming from the door, but the window, your head snapped towards it. You didn't even have to question who it was. There was only one person who would come tapping at your window, especially at night. You moved closer and looked out, sure enough, seeing the familiar head of green hair on the other side of the glass. In only a moment, you had the window unlatched and opened for him to enter. Cove pulled himself through the window with ease, standing straight in your room and dusting himself off. Cove, what are you doing here? When he saw you, he seemed worried, and he ran a hand through his hair before speaking. I came to the front door. I wanted to just come by. But your moms told me they didn't know if you should be bothered right now, that I should come back later. I know they wouldn't have said it if you were working on some school stuff or whatever, so I got worried. I thought something bad happened. And then you climbed up the side of my house. He smiled, feeling unrepentant for disregarding your mom's ruling. How else was I supposed to get in? You couldn't quite believe that he had really shown up for you like this, but then again, you shouldn't have been surprised. He was always there for you. Well, what happened? Cove pulled your desk chair next to your bed and sat down, his long legs bent in front of him. You fidgeted a little with your bed covers, not quite knowing what to say, but he was willing to wait. There's a lot going on right now, for real. Cove looked at you in confusion, his eyebrows dipping. What is it? My parents, from before my mom's, died when I was a baby. Moms didn't say how. Maybe they don't know. But there wasn't any other family I could live with, so that's why I got adopted. Without having to say anything else, Cove reached over and pulled you into a tight embrace, his familiar warmth enveloping you. I'm sorry, Blake. His words were whispered comfortingly into your shoulder. You don't have to do this. I want to. He didn't say anything more, but he didn't let go either. Stop, they're so cute. I love them. Also, why does my room kind of match Cove, though? Can you explain everything to me? Yeah, hold on, time out. Between the dark blues and then like his minty green like hair situation, why does it look like Cove matches my room? I don't know how I feel about that. That's something. You nodded softly before taking in a heavy breath and launching into the story. Cove sat quietly and listened attentively, nodding every now and then or taking in a sharp inhale. Silence settled between you. as Cove sat quietly for a moment, contemplating everything you had said. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, drifting through the night towards you. Blake, I'm really sorry about what happened to your parents. So sorry. He stopped suddenly and took in a deep, shaky breath, and you got the impression he was struggling with what was right to say. Yeah, I think I would feel bad. I don't feel worse about it. I never knew them at all. They were strangers, even if they did have me. Blake, you're not doing anything wrong. You know that, right? I think you can be as sad as you want for as long as you need, or you can feel okay about it whenever you want to. He sighed and ran a hand through his hair as he looked out towards the window. I guess what I'm trying to say is, whatever you feel about it is how you feel about it. You don't have to force yourself to be different. Aww. Thank you, Cove. His words had made you feel better, and you knew it was true. You didn't have to apologize or make any excuses for the way you felt about it all. Cove smiled at you a little, and you could tell he was trying to be comforting. And your moms definitely don't. It doesn't matter if you're not blood related, you're definitely family. I can see that, and I hope you can too. You felt the reassurance in his eyes. A knock on the door made you look up, though before you could even move, it swung open and Elizabeth stood in your doorframe. Okay, Elizabeth, here's my beef with you, girl. In the beginning, you just straight up barged in our room, so there was no boundary set. Now, you did that weird parent thing where you knock to let make it be known, and then you just again storm in on your own. So you're closer than you used to be, but usually when you knock on someone's door, you wait for them to say come in or yeah, or somehow acknowledge your presence on the other side of the door. Then you open it. That's how privacy and manners work. Girl, who raised you? We've been raised by the same moms. I don't get why you're struggling with this so damn hard. Okay, Elizabeth, what's up? What do you want? She walked closer, and you didn't quite know what to do or what she was planning on saying. Would you mind going? I want to talk to just Blake. You can come back. It's not going to be forever or anything. Cove seemed equal parts concerned and skeptical. Leaving now wasn't a concept that thrilled him. You can't ask that. Elizabeth, be so for real. You barged in my room and now you're demanding Cove leaves when he's the one I was fucking talking to. Stop it. Stop it all. Blake, please, this is private. Elizabeth gave you a hard stare, and eventually you relented. You waited until the two of you were alone before fixing her with a cautious stare. Elizabeth folded her arms, looking you over. Did moms tell you about your parents too? My birth parents also died. Elizabeth broke eye contact after that. So thirsty. Feel like I'm living in the desert. Sorry. Why did you want to talk to me? Elizabeth raised an eyebrow at the question, as though the answer should be obvious. I was worried about you. I was the one who brought it up, but I made you deal with whatever was left when I was gone. She sighed, glancing upwards for a moment before settling on you once more. I wanted to ask you what happened without everyone breathing down our necks. That was pretty crappy of you to just bail. She rolled her eyes, but you didn't miss the small smile that threatened to peek out. I know, I'm not very nice. I'm okay, Elizabeth. It didn't upset me. How are you allowed to be that mature? The lightning spirits in her were quickly gone as she slipped back into a scowl. You have to be born in the US to become president. That's the most random sentence I think I've ever heard from anybody ever. And I've heard some wild out-of-pocket shit. What? You had never heard of that dream of hers before. She noticed your bafflement and continued. I get I was never gonna be president, but it just feels weird having stuff taken away, not even getting a chance at it. Okay, that actually makes sense. I don't like having to know that when I was born, I was gonna have a completely different life. So different, I can't even think about what it looked like in my head. I could have spoken another language, lived away from everything I've ever seen here, had someone else as my sibling. And then my parents died and I was adopted, and the life I got became a totally new thing forever. I can't go back to what it was, even if I wanted to. A heaviness settled between you and the person who became your sister. Yeah, I can understand what she means of finding out, like, hey, if this hadn't happened, then everything would have been different. Like, you wouldn't have had your life, you would have had a different life. Yeah, I think, yeah. Elizabeth, I get what you're saying. It was a confusing feeling to have lived one way for as long as you can remember, but not having it be what was originally yours. Elizabeth watched you seriously. She was still trying to make sense of this to you and herself. I don't know why today was the day. Nothing came up to make me ask the question. It was just something I've had in my head for a while. When it was just me and Mom's in the living room, I just kind of said it, finally, and there you go. She shifted from one foot to another, relaxing her stance just a bit. She also spoke more gently. Learning about them and what happened doesn't change how I feel about our family, Blake. She smirked, fixing you with sharp eyes. I had already figured out a long time ago that moms weren't our biological parents. That wasn't news. Keep listening, I guess. I don't really have much to add. Nothing about the family I was first born in would have made me decide that this wasn't my family anymore. So if you had hoped you'd be free of my big sisterly status, don't think you're so lucky. She bumped her shoulder against yours playfully, her lips tilted at the corners. You'll always be my little sibling. Aw, hug her. Not the sibling moment. It took a few seconds, but she gave you a quick squeeze in return. You'll always be my family, too. Chuckling, she seemed pleased with how the conversation had gone in the end. We should probably head downstairs and make sure moms are okay. It's been a long day for everybody. That is fair. You gave her a nod. Down we go. You met up with Cove just outside the room and made the short trip to the lower floor of your home together. The familiarity of it all felt nice. Hold on, are those new pillows? I don't think those pillows were a thing before. When you stepped into the living room, you found your moms quietly sitting together at the kitchen table. I also really like the style, like the setup of this house, because it's very open. Like, you have access to, like, everything. and I think that's cool. Aw, someone had like a little drink. I also love that the sleepover moment where it had literally been pointed out to you that what was the setup, like you and Liz, like your character and Liz were here and then moms were here or something, so then Cove could have sat by you, Liz, or either of the moms, and I could literally like picture it in my brain. They both got to their feet when they noticed the arrival, and Ma gave you a careful smile. It seemed they were too concerned to really register that Cove was inexplicably here now, despite being turned away at the door earlier. We're so glad to see you. Hi. Hi, sweetheart. Ma then came over and wrapped her arms around you and Elizabeth, giving you a tight hug. It didn't take long for Mom to join in, putting her arms around the both of you. We really couldn't have asked for better, kiddos. We love you. More than we could ever say. Moms! You're smooshing me! You all chuckled, the rumble of laughter shaking you all as you continued to hold each other tight. I love you too. They both pulled back eventually and grinned at the two of you, and you knew then that you all had each other and you always would. Hey, I hope you're all right. Lee came up towards you, a soft smile plastered on her face. And are you okay, Elizabeth? Elizabeth rolled her eyes and huffed a breath, and you knew she wasn't used to showing her vulnerable side. I'm doing fine. Lee nodded, though you could tell she didn't quite believe her. Well now, since we're all here, how about we do something together as a family? That sounds like an excellent idea. We should have some fun before the night's over. I love the sound of that. Okay. Cove looked a little bashful, likely over being included as part of the family, but he tried not to pay much attention to it. Why not? You hid the smile that threatened to tilt your lips, knowing that Elizabeth must have been in a good mood if she hadn't teased Cove for being part of it. And no matter what she could have said about it, you wanted him to be here. He was someone who was really important to you. Who's got a suggestion? It should be something we can do here in the house with everyone in the same room. You suddenly remembered the show you and Lee had been working on earlier. Maybe we can do our show? Potentially? I don't know. Sure. A show? This is the first time we're hearing of this. I'm intrigued. It would be amazing if you put it on for us to watch. Oh yeah, I need to see what you've cooked up. That'd be cool. You smiled at Lee, who returned the gesture while bouncing on her heels in excitement. Take some seats and we'll get everything together. Your moms collected the chairs from around the dining table, and set them in a row in the living room, where there was enough space for the show. While they did that, you and Lee quickly gathered the supplies you needed and rehashed the plan one last time. You listened through the song you had chosen one last time. The backdrop you had prepared earlier was also ready to go now that it was needed. When the two of you returned to the living room, everyone was sitting and chatting amongst themselves while they waited. The group quieted down when you and Lee stood in front of them on your makeshift stage. Lee was buzzing quietly with excitement beside you. I feel like I'd be, after everything that happened today, I think I'd be unsure. You could only wait to see how this was going to go. Okay, so welcome to our show. We only came up with it today, but we promise it'll be good. Definitely no refunds. Laughter rippled through the mini audience. Then you nodded at Lee that you were ready to begin. Lee took in a deep breath, waiting the few beats it took to get into the song, and started singing. Your part of the song joined in just a few minutes later, and you smiled at each other as you sang together. The backdrop you had created gave a great atmosphere to work off of. When the performance was over, Lee took your hand in hers, and the two of you bowed deeply together. Everyone gave you a round of applause and cheered for an encore. When you straightened yourself up, you were happy to see that even Elizabeth was clapping for you. Not Elizabeth having a sweet supportive moment. Okay, I see you. Bravo! Bravo! You are so talented. Your family rose from their seats and came over to congratulate you more directly. You were beaming from ear to ear. Cove was the first to approach, stepping up to you and Lee with a smile on his face. Nice job. Thank you. You're a really great singer, Blake. It was cool. Thanks. Welcome. Hey, were you the one who painted the backdrop? Yeah, that was me. Cove smiled, content over his guess being correct. I thought so. It was good. You couldn't help but feel flattered that he could recognize your talents so easily. Your parents gushed about how great everything was and thanked you for sharing it with them. Elizabeth was complimentary in her own way, although she did describe the show as cute, which you knew she meant as kind of kiddie. You laughed it off, however, and were just happy that everyone had a nice time. In that moment, you couldn't have been more pleased to be a part of the family you had. That was so cute. Stop it. I can't. Okay. Water break. I hope I'm not getting, sick. Maybe it's my allergies again. I should take my fucking medicine after this. 'Cause not me having kind of sore, scratchy throat right now. Oof. Not helping my ability to read at all. Okay, so theoretically, depending on how long they are, we might be able to get through 2 more. So we should at least get through dinner, and then maybe road trip. 'Cause some of these are just way longer than you'd expect, honestly. Actually, I will be right back. I'm going to run and grab something real quick. Okay, I am back. We took a little cough drop break. Hopefully that will help. My throat, because my throat is just having a rough go of it right now. We will at least do the dinner moment. If my throat continues to be a jackass, we might call it there though. Apparently, because here's the thing, it could be my allergies, I could be a little under the weather, or it could just be like a consequence of just how much reading I've done with these streams. While I'm absolutely loving it and enjoying my time, it is a lot of reading and a lot of talking, so my voice is probably a little like, hey, what the fuck are we doing? But yeah, I have the cough drop, I have my water, I will take my allergy medicine before bed tonight, so if it's the allergies, that shouldn't be a problem anymore. And we will figure it out and kind of keep going. But yeah, anyways, dinner. Ooh, I lost that there for a minute. Sunlight shone through the windows as you sat in your living room, your home phone pressed to your ear. Cove was on the other end. It'd been shaping up to be an ordinary day like any other, until Cove had called unexpectedly. He sounded unusually nervous greeting you. You listened silently as he kept talking, his words stilted. So, I was just, wondering, do you want to come over to my house for dinner tonight? The question came out strangely, almost like he rehearsed it a few times beforehand. Wait, no, stop, because the idea of little baby teen Cove in the mirror, like, trying to rehearse what he's gonna say, is so sweet. Your eyes widened a little. You hadn't expected this to be the reason behind the call. Let's keep listening, make sure he gets his words out before we just, like, jump on him and give him an answer. Cove continued. His next words sounded rehearsed too, and tinged with nervousness. My mom and dad, they really want you to be there, if your parents don't have a problem with it. They asked me to ask you. You took a moment to think. Dinner at home would be quiet and uneventful today. If you really wanted to, you could go to Cove's instead. Cove spoke up again, breaking your thought train. His voice was softer than before. Also, I want you to be there too. Can you? Come over, I mean? His little face. Yeah, I can come. Thanks, Blake. I'll let them know when I can. He sounded noticeably relieved by your response. Was you coming over for a dinner today that serious? He spoke to you for a little while longer to explain what time to come over and other details, then hung up. And that was that, for now anyway. Soon enough, the sun dipped out of the sky and evening came. It was time for you to head to Cove's house. After letting Elizabeth know you were leaving, she didn't look away from the TV, just grunted. You made the small journey across the street. You knocked a couple times on the heavy door to their condo. As you waited for an answer, you found yourself contemplating being a guest while both of Cove's parents were there. The idea made you curious. You wondered why they decided to invite you out of the blue. Maybe you'd find out later tonight. You didn't get too much time with your thoughts, though. The door opened soon enough. Cove's mom, Kyra, stood in the frame, smiling warmly at you. Hey, Blake, welcome. Please come on in. She opened the door wider and moved to make room. You stepped inside, allowing her to shut it behind you. Thanks so much for coming over. I know it was kind of last second. Thank you for having me. Of course, just make yourself at home. It's not my home, but I've been given permission to say that. Hey Blake, welcome to our humble abode. You jerked your head towards the sound of Mr. Holden's voice. He waved at you briefly from the kitchen, with his back turned and a large spoon in hand. Hope you're hungry, 'cause I'm whipping up a lot of tasty stuff. True to his word, you heard something sizzling on the stove. You closed your eyes and inhaled. It smelled spicy and savory. With Mr. Holden busy and Cove nowhere to be seen, it was just you and Kyra. She gave you a weary smile. He sure is. Well, I've been barred from cooking the entire time I'm staying here. Can you believe that? She nudged you with an elbow. Mr. Holden scoffed good-naturedly, then spoke from over his shoulder. You're on vacation, Kyra. You need to accept that already. She yelled back, amusement obvious on her face and in her tone. People still cook when they're on vacation. Everyone's gotta eat. It's not like I'm some celebrity who can go out for every meal or hire a private chef. Well, in this house, you're a VIP. Stop, they're so cute. I love them. Kyra smiled and shook her head quietly. Then she turned to face you once more. Sorry about that, Blake. Here I was trying to strike up a conversation with you, and Cliff just had to butt in. I don't butt in. She eyed him, chuckling in disbelief. He wasn't exactly disproving her point with that. Kyra leaned over to whisper to you. It's okay. He likes to be included, but since Clifford insisted on cooking all by himself, he'll have to wait. The two of us can chat. Her next question continued to be said in a hushed tone just to be safe. So how are you doing? I'm good. Kyra didn't seem too convinced by your awkward phrasing, but she nodded anyway. She opened her mouth to say something more, but some lightly pounding footsteps caught your attention. You checked to see Cove emerge from the hall a few moments later. He might have heard all the commotion and left his room to see what was going on. He quickly took stock of the situation. His cheeks tinted pink at the sight of you standing in his living room, and his hand came up to rub his arm almost bashfully. Blake, you made it. Thanks for coming. Cove's voice was unnaturally loud, as if he thought you wouldn't be able to hear him from where you were only a few feet away. Hi, Cove. You doing okay? Yeah, I'm fine. You didn't sound convincing at all. You narrowed your eyes suspiciously, but didn't call him out on it. If you could talk to him alone tonight, maybe you'd ask him what was going on then. It was when you glanced away from Cove that you spotted his parents watching the two of you interact. Cove noticed their stares too, meeting them with narrowed eyes. Cove is over it. Are we having dinner now? Not yet, bud. I'm still cooking. Alright, I'm gonna go back to my room. As he turned to leave, he bent his head to the side to face you. You coming? The question was quiet, but you heard it clearly. You smiled, pleased that he asked, and nodded in the affirmative. Cove turned fully and made his way down the hall. Have fun, you two. We'll call you when food's ready to go. With that, you followed after Cove. The two of you made your way down the hall. I mean, I would argue it's probably the first time, for the simple fact of when they were younger, I think they spent a lot of time over at, like, my house, quote unquote, and then out, like, at the beach and stuff. So yeah, I have a feeling it's gonna be, this is the first time you were invited to see Cove's room. Cove got to the door first, opening it and stepping inside. You joined him. There was a mat on the floor in front of the door. As you stepped over the threshold into his room, you felt the crunch of sand beneath your feet. Okay, before anything else, we have to look at Cove's room. Okay, so he's got his little map, his little curtains, he's got a desk, and a little picture. He's got fish. Oh my goodness, look at the ocean boy and all his ocean beach things. Look at them all, little shells and stuff. Is that a little dolphin statue? There's two, wait a minute, that's so fucking cute. And then his surfboard all tucked away nice and tidy. Okay, I can vibe. That's a big fish. Like, there's little fish, and then there's that guy. Okay, back to it. You glanced down. Sand was clustered around the entrance. You even spotted small amounts of it dusting the rest of the room's floor. Though you hadn't anticipated it, you weren't surprised at the sight. Of course, Beach Boy Cove Holden would get his room all sandy. So, this is my room. Cove was a bit shy as he said so, fidgeting with the hem of his shirt using one hand and vaguely gesturing to the space with the other. There's stuff you can sit on if you want. You looked over at the desk chair as an option. When you turned back, Cove was already sitting on the edge of his large bed. Not that are you trying to make your own beach with all this sand? It's nice. Cove's chest puffed out as he sat up straighter and smiled. Thanks. Dad helped me put stuff up, but I chose what to have and where. That's cool. Sit next to Cove on his bed. As soon as you sat next to him, Cove grew tense. His back went stiff and he ducked his head away. He tried to hide a trembling smile. Not the oh my god. He said it under his breath as if he didn't want you to hear. You obviously did, and easily, since you were right beside him. Give him a comforting smile. Cove, it's just me, buddy. He raised his eyebrows. You both kept noticing each other's every move. Oh no, not this. Not that you're like an open book, you know that. Nah, he only shrugged back. Cove took that as the non-answer it was, shifting nervously on the bed. He pointedly gazed away from you, the tips of his ears red. With the silence growing, your gaze began to drift. You stared at the bright fish swimming in the tank. There were a bunch of them, floating to and fro in the open space. They stood out starkly against the green aquarium plants. How long have you had those fish? My dad bought them for me not very long after I moved here. I guess it's been years now. Wow, that's a long time. He peered carefully into the tank. The fish looked to be doing well. He must take good care of them. Most of them were small, but there was one especially big one. What are their names? I don't name them. Well, not really. You lifted an eyebrow at that. He continued the explanation sheepishly. Mostly I just call them things based on what they look like. Squirt for a small one, tangerine for a really orange one, that sort of thing. I've had a lot of fish and I'm not that good at coming up with names. Mood. I can't name shit for shit. You didn't have any pets, but you always had trouble naming your stuffed animals or whatever else. It was such a hard choice. Oh, a couple of them have other types of names. He pointed to a small, orangish red fish. It was minding its own business away from the others. My dad named her Dreamcatcher, and that other one's Mark. Mom came up with that one. Cove smiled to himself, his eyes reflecting the glow from the tank. You let other people name your fish? Yeah, it's nice. He then turned to you, tilting his head to the side. There was a considering look on his face. Do you want to name one? Can I? His smile grew a little at your interest. Sure. There's a few who don't have names right now, the newer ones. You can pick which you want to name. He pointed each of the recent acquisitions out to you. The first was the smallest fish in the tank. It was completely orange and zipped all over the place, running laps around the others. The second was slightly bigger and red. Its tail was dotted with black spots, which almost resembled freckles. The last fish was the biggest one. Its multicolored scales rippled under the bright light of the tank as it slowly made its way across the vast expanse. You went with, "Let me name the teeny orange dude." Cove only nodded at your answer, waiting on you to decide a suitable name. You watched the fish you chose closely. As you did, a name eventually came to you. Sunbeam is cute, but why do I also like Frank the fish? Fuck it, we're going with Frank the fish, buddies. Cove laughed unreservedly at your choice. It was affectionate rather than insulting. You name things like my mom. All right, it's Frank. With that, his attention moved from you to the tank. He peered fondly at it and its inhabitants. You smiled proudly at Frank as it swam through the tendrils of the plants, disappearing then reappearing soon after. You noticed then that Cove was sitting closer to you than he was before. He must have scooted over at some point during the conversation. This close, your shoulders were almost brushing against each other. Your heartbeat picked up a little at the realization. You know, I'm not allowed to have pets in my house, not even fish. The corners of Cove's lips turned down at that. That doesn't sound fair. It's not like fish would make a mess of your house or anything. You just gotta take care of their tank and feed them and they'll be okay. I don't mind it too much. You have to do so much for a pet. It's a lot of work and responsibility. My moms take it super seriously, and that's why they don't want to just get one. That's true. Your current conversation brought to mind a memory from years ago. He launched into it without any warning, earning you a brief, confused look from Cove. One time, Lizzie, Elizabeth, came back from playing at the beach and just shut herself in her room. She only came down for food, and then she ran back upstairs straight after. It was kind of weird. My moms didn't think that much of it at first, though. But then that night, Mom went to her room to say goodnight and started screaming. Mom and I ran over to see what happened. Lizzie had this huge lizard in her arms. Cove's eyebrows rose at that, and he leaned forward in interest. A lizard? Where'd that come from? Elizabeth said she saw it half buried in the sand and didn't know what it was. Then she pulled it out and got the answer, so she brought it home. She hid the lizard in her room for most of the day because she wanted to keep it. Mom and Ma were not happy. They worried about putting it out during night, but she was going to have to let it go in the morning. Lizzie was really upset. She did bring it back to the beach eventually, but she wouldn't talk to anyone for days. When she did get over it, it was almost like it never happened. You laughed thinking back to that time. Elizabeth had always been stubborn, but when she was younger, she forgot grudges quickly. Now it wasn't so easy. Cove had been quiet for most of the story, apart from the reveal of the lizard. He had a thoughtful look on his face. I can't even imagine what it'd be like to have a sibling. You gave a serious thought to his statement before you told him. There are ups and downs, I would say. It's fun to have her there when she wants to be there, but now Elizabeth barely feels like hanging out with me. Cove pursed his lips at the words, considering them quietly for a while. That's interesting. I think your family is cool. He didn't have much else to say, though while on the topic of your family, you considered your relationship with your moms too. See, this I find interesting. Either I think they are the absolute best, I get along with them, thought they were okay, or found them to be difficult to deal with. I wouldn't mind having the option of like having a preference, because for me personally, I think I prefer Ma more than Mom. Like, I think I would argue that Mom's a little bit more sometimes about certain things, and I think Ma is just the more laid back of the two. I'm gonna go with got along with your moms. You had disagreements with them, but at the end of the day, you loved them and they loved you. That was what really mattered. Well, say what you want about them, but at least your moms never tried to pay someone to be your friend. Damn. The thought prompted you to look over at Cove. He probably still didn't know what happened. You doubted that Mr. Holden mentioned it, and you never had. You wondered if you should tell him. It was a long time ago, but you were keeping a secret from Cove. No, it's a bad time. Don't tell him right now. You could bring it up some other day when the moment was right. Time passed, but you didn't really notice. The two of you were busy making plans for the rest of the summer and chatting about your respective days. Eventually, you heard a muffled holler from a different part of the house. You and Cove raised your heads in unison. It's time for dinner. Cove watched the firmly shut door he had been locked behind for most of the night, but he didn't make a move to get up from the bed. You couldn't see his face, so you didn't know what expression he was wearing. I'm glad you came. Cove peeked back at you from the side. It's been awkward. I get that. It's been hard on you, huh? You felt sympathetic towards him. You didn't know what he was going through, but you cared about him. Cove said nothing else and remained sat where he was. Now would be as good a time as any to ask him why his parents so suddenly wanted you to come over. Sure. Is there a reason they wanted me to come over tonight? It hasn't been awkward for just me. Sometimes it gets like this when no one else is around, but now you're here. Huh. You hadn't considered that, but it sort of made sense in a way. There was another shout from outside, too muffled to actually know the words, but you could imagine what they were. Let's go. Cove finally got up, lumbering away with his shoulders sagged. You followed after him. Together, the two of you made your way back to the living room. As you expected, Cove's parents were politely waiting for you at the kitchen table, beside the windows overlooking the back of the house. Food had been prepared and set. Mr. Holden beamed as you and Cove took your places. I hope everyone's hungry. I cooked up a feast. I know I am. Yeah. Cove's mumbled response wasn't nearly as upbeat as theirs. His parents didn't notice, or they pretended not to. Mr. Holden instead looked at you, grinning. Let's all just take a moment to thank our special guest for being with us here tonight. I'm so glad you were able to make it, Blake, and on such short notice. I literally live across the street. I hang out with Cove all the time. Why put this attention on me like this? It's weird. Sure, thank them for inviting. That's the polite option, right? I'm happy to be here. Thank you both for inviting me. Well, that's it. Everyone please dig in. You can help yourselves to the food. Upon his encouragement, you looked over the meal spread out in front of you. There was a large garden salad in the center, surrounded by a variety of Mexican dishes. There were a lot of sides and optional sauces to add. I like Mexican food. Yeah, happy about these options. You loved Mexican food, and there were so many dishes to choose from, you were practically drooling. Utensils and plates scraped and clanked together as the group began filling their plates. Cliff, could you pass the salsa verde? Of course. Thank you. Let me just say you really outdid yourself tonight. I'm so jealous. Jealous of what? Your cooking's nothing to sneeze at, Kyra. Cove's parents made small talk, filling the silence with what seemed to be barely any effort. You chimed in as well. Did it take you a long time to cook all of this, Mr. Holden? Oh, not at all. Sure, this is more than I usually make for me and Cove, but I enjoyed every second of it. Might have gone faster if you had some help, though. Cove's mom grumbled, but it was light-hearted. Mr. Holden chuckled and shook his head. Not this again. I make the rules here, and I say guests don't cook. Even when they're staying for literal weeks. Even then. Everything looks great, Dad, as always. Thanks, sport. Glad you think so. Cove smiled. It was genuine, even if it was strained at the corners. Brief silences interspersed the small talk. You piled some food on your plate, waiting for your turn if someone was serving themselves a dish that you had your eye on. Once the food had been divided and things settled down, Cove's parents started talking again. Now then. You sat up in your seat when you noticed they were both looking at you. How has everything been over at your house? Are your moms well? You've been keeping busy this summer? Or maybe you're just trying to take it easy during the break? That is a lot of questions. I'm not even gonna lie, I'd be a little overwhelmed, because that's why the random interrogation. Ask one thing at a time. You were blindsided by them, your mind blank. Then again, this was Mr. Holden. Maybe you should have expected this. Answered how things were at your house. It's been good. Oh, that's wonderful. Tell them how moms are doing. My moms are great. Mom took us out for dessert a couple weeks ago. Since her project went really well. Is that so? I'll have to congratulate her when I see her. Mention the things you've done this summer. You should know what I've been up to since so much has included your family. For real though. Mr. Holden laughed loud and short. You caught him off guard with that. A fair point. And that was it for answering questions. Hooray! Kyra nodded along. You could tell she was actually listening to the words you were saying. She was trying to include you, not humor you. Did you know, Cliff, Blake is really into socializing? Mr. Holden's face lit up and he stopped eating so he could lean forward. His arms braced against the table. Oh, that's right. Very cool. How serious am I about socializing? It's just a hobby. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good to do things just for fun. Everyone needs a hobby. I've been thinking of picking up wood carving myself. You couldn't tell how serious he was being about that declaration. Thanks. Cove's parents were definitely the encouraging type, but you could already tell that much about them. There was a lull in conversation as everyone focused their attention on their respective plates. You noted, not for the first time, that Cove's parents were the ones guiding the conversation. You wondered if you should break the silence this time. Sure. I also like other things. Would you like to tell us more? Yeah, absolutely. They looked genuinely eager for you to keep talking, so you did. The rest of the dinner continued just like that, with light conversation as you ate your meals. Eventually, all the dishes on the kitchen table were pretty much gone. Kyra set down her fork and rested her arms at her sides, letting loose a satisfied sigh. Her plate was completely empty. That was delish. Thank you for your culinary creations, Cliff. Mr. Holden was like a flower soaking up the rays of the sun. He beamed, flattered by the praise. Ate until you were satisfied. Oh, his little blushy face. That's sweet. It had taken you some time to finish it all, but eventually you cleared your plate. Cove successfully kept his presence to a minimum for the full meal. He was slumped over, even now, toying with his silverware. His parents practically only talked to you. Most attempts to entice him to join the conversation failed. It wasn't typical for him to say so little. He at least tried to participate. You didn't get much time to contemplate Cove's situation because your attention was taken by Mr. Holden's pointedly clearing his voice. Not to sound like a broken record, but thanks for coming, Blake. I'm glad we finally got the chance to have you over for a real dinner. What? Did I hear that right? This is the first time Blake has ever had dinner here? Why in the world haven't you invited them over sooner? Cove was always the one going over to Blake's house until now. I mean, how was I supposed to reject the generous offer of the Thrasher family to host my kid? Kyra shook her head, but the amused smile she was sporting told you she wasn't actually mad. This guy, honestly. The three of you looked at Cove in unison, his small sound being more than enough to get the focus on him after his silence. By now, he'd stopped fiddling with his fork. Would it be all right for Blake to stay over, like for the night? He shot you a shy glance, then, smiling a little. If you're cool with that. Mr. Holden's shoulders stiffened. He sat up straighter, eyes darting back and forth between you and Cove. His mouth opened, but not a peep came out. You'd never seen Cove's dad say no to him before, but this was different than the usual request. It wasn't so simple, and Mr. Holden was lost. Then Cove's mom reached out and took hold of his shirt collar. She pulled him closer. She glanced at you before leaning in and bringing a hand up in front of their faces. The two adults whispered seriously to each other. Cove's eyes opened wider. He leaned forward as if that would help him overhear his parents' conversation. Mr. Holden kept gesturing with his hands while Kyra made sure he didn't get too far away with all his movements. Every now and then, both of them would watch you and Cove out of the corner of their eyes. It didn't seem like they were fighting to you. They looked more like kind of a tiny sports team having a private huddle. After a bit, they broke the group up. They moved back to sit properly in their chairs. You snuck a look at Cove. He stared at them expectantly. You were eager to hear their verdict too. We, Kyra and I, think that should be fine, but... He lifted a finger dramatically, his brows raising as he met Cove's gaze and then your own. We'll have to talk with Blake's parents to make sure they're comfortable with it. If they are, we can arrange for a sleepover to happen on a different night when everyone is more prepared. If Blake's folks don't like the idea, there's nothing we can do. He finished the mini-speech with a wide shrug using his full arms. He also checked out Kyra from the corner of his eye and gave her a crooked smile. She nodded approvingly and grinned back. You thought you saw her give him a thumbs up, but her hand was partially blocked by the table. They looked so pleased with themselves over the answer, but they just passed the actual decision on whether it was all right or not to someone else, namely your parents. If this was a sports game, they would have punted the ball away. Cove hung his head, deflated. He had been hoping you could stay over today, not some hypothetical time in the future. Not that you could always sneak in my room again. Yeah, that one. Cove's eyes sparkled at the suggestion. You wouldn't be surprised to have him knocking on your window sometime. Though he likely still would without the invite. With that, dinner finally came to an end. Mr. Holden stood up from the table and began collecting empty plates. Cove was asked to help out, which he did with little fuss. Kyra tried to lend a hand as well, however Mr. Holden didn't let her. It seemed she was barred from cleaning as well as cooking. You weren't allowed to chip in either, since you were there as the declared guest of honor. Although the meal was over, the night wasn't. It looked like you weren't going home just yet, after all. You were asked to wait on the couch. While Cove and his dad were cleaning up the mess, Kyra disappeared down the hall after shooting you a wink. It was a bit strange sitting by yourself while everyone else had something to do. Luckily, you weren't alone for too long. After a couple of minutes, Cove's mom returned with a deck of cards in hand. She strolled into the room confidently while shuffling. So, who's up for a few rounds? Cove and his dad looked over their shoulders at the question. They were mutually intrigued by the cards in her hands. She beamed at their expressions and stepped further into the living room, ignoring the couches. She sat cross-legged on the floor by the coffee table. She turned to you and gestured at the space beside her, smiling invitingly. You accepted and followed her lead. The living room carpet was soft, though the hardwood floor underneath could definitely still be felt. Kyra did an overhand shuffle while she waited for the others to finish their tasks. The smile had yet to leave her lips. This is going to be good. Excited. You enjoyed card games, and it would be fun to play with Cove and his parents. It didn't take much longer for Cove and his dad to wrap things enough to call it good. Cove's dad appeared first, followed closely behind by Cove. Mr. Holden rubbed his hands together in anticipation. All right, I'm ready. As he took a seat across from you on the floor, you noticed that Cove hadn't joined him. He went straight down the hall instead without a word. You stared on confused as he disappeared through his bedroom door. Cove's parents didn't look concerned at the stunt. Kyra nonchalantly split the deck of cards into two and riffled the halves together while offering an explanation of sorts. Cove doesn't keep his wallet with him when he's home. He puts it away. What? Cove quickly returned to the living room, a black wallet in his hand. He took a place at the foot of the table with the rest of you. You blinked as Cove unzipped his wallet. You all use real money on card games with family? While you sat there, your hands idle in your lap, the three shot looks at one another and sized each other up. That's right, $5 per round, per person. Winner takes all. Go big or go home. Oh, are you planning on kicking Blake to the curb, or do you intend on donating to the guest of honor's pot, Mr. High Roller? Mr. Holden narrowed his eyes and leaned back against the side of the couch, completely at ease. If Blake wants to play, I'll fund their way in. Don't you worry about that. He rested an arm across the top of a knee that he propped up. Cove's dad was acting slick in a way you'd never seen before. Appreciated his offer. Thanks, Mr. Holden. His tone and stance instantly became more familiarly friendly when he started directing his words to you. No problem, you can count on me. You can let me pay for Blake, they're my friend. Mr. Holden grinned with a chuckle. All right, bud, I concede. You're too polite for me. Well, you've got your ticket. Interested in throwing in? You glanced around. This seemed like serious business. In response to your consternation, Kyra offered her competitive smile. Kyra softened her competitive smile. Don't worry too much. We'll probably just do some rounds of Go Fish tonight. No biggie. What do you think? Sure, I'll join in. It'll be weird if I just watch. I'd love to play. Mr. Holden gave you a big thumbs up, while Cove nodded firmly back. I'm decent at Go Fish. Sometimes you won, sometimes you lost. You like to think you weren't bad at it, though. Fantastic. We'll play for however long everyone wants to keep going, or until people start running out of cash but are still refusing to quit while they're behind. Speaking for yourself, I see. With a laugh, Kyra nudged you using an elbow, then motioned towards the other two with her chin. Don't be fooled by their soft faces. These boys are sharks. In reaction to her words, Mr. Holden smirked and Cove's eyebrows became more angled. Kyra's phrasing made you think back to when you were young, specifically of Mr. Holden's favorite shark pants that he used to wear all the time. Perhaps they had been a fit for him in ways you didn't know of. You could feel tension in the air. Cove and his parents glued their eyes to one another, then all placed $5 bills in an empty space in front of them. Cove dropped an extra one for you, giving you a tiny smile after he did. Once this was done, Kyra began dealing out cards to everybody. It was time to begin. The first round came and went quickly, with the group getting into the groove of things. You won right away, which meant you had money to keep playing the second round. You're a natural. Nicely done. You'd better keep those wits about you for the next round, though. As the night went on, so did the games. Mr. Holden would jokingly shake his fist whenever someone other than him got a pair. Kyra acted as a news anchor, reporting on every move everyone made by speaking into her curled fist. Cove was still a few words, but now it was because he was focused on the game instead of being overcome with awkwardness. Most of the time, you even spotted a smile on his lips. You won quite a few games to your delight. You had a hefty money pile on your side of the table. You must regret paying Blake's way in now, huh? No way. Blake might be beating me, but they're also beating you too. Cove turned towards you and smiled, looking pleased at your ability to match his mom and dad. You grinned at him, touched by his speedy comeback. It became clear that where the money went in the moment didn't really matter. They ended up giving it back to one another in other ways, and not just through more rounds of cards. You sat back looking over the scene. A tiny smile grew on your face. Cove's family was pretty cool, you thought. You were glad you got this chance to come over and spend time with the three of them. Okie dokie, this is where we save, so we will be continuing on Road Trip. I might do a makeup stream tomorrow, or I might just rest my fucking voice because I don't know what's going on with my throat, but it's gotten progressively worse, and I don't want to end up with no voice. So, we are going to call it there for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I appreciate you, and I hope y'all have a good weekend with whatever you get up to. And as always, take care of yourselves, be kind to yourselves. It's hard being a person. You're doing the best you can. I am proud of you. And don't forget to live a life that pisses off a bigot. Bye, y'all.